Hello, friends. Welcome back. You're listening to Judith Doctor Lifeline. And my passion is for healing of the whole person. Not just your body, not just your spirit, but your soul. Jesus Christ came that we might have life that would affect our whole body, our soul, and our spirit. And I was a nurse, as I explained to you earlier, but also I married a man whose last name is Doctor. Now, why do you think I married my husband with the name Doctor, right? I must have had healing in my heart already. I must have had something inside of me that wanted to become a healer, to offer healing. I became a nurse. I didn't really like being a nurse. I didn't really like doing bedpan duty. Those kind of things back in the 60s. That was a long time ago, of course, ancient history for most of you, but it was my history. But in 1959, I married my husband, Gerald Doctor, with his last name. And so that name was a great name to have, but it tells me something, that I have a desire for healing of the whole person. God created me for a purpose. He created you for a purpose, as I talked to you in the first podcast. Meaning and purpose for your life. What has He created you for? What are you called to do, to offer in the life that you have on this short time and years? Years go by, as I already said, they go by fast. When I was a child, sometimes I like to ask the people in my groups, what was your favorite book? Or what was your favorite fairy tale? And back when I was a child in about 4th grade, my favorite book was called Blue Jeans. Blue Jeans. You know about jeans, right? Blue Jeans was a story about a city boy who was weak and didn't know how to do anything. But his mother and father took him to his aunt and uncle in the country in a farm for the summer. And during the summer, he learned how to do many new things. He put on muscles, he grew stronger, and he was transformed. He was transformed by those weeks and months in the summer in a farm. That was my favorite book. So it tells you something about the desire in my heart when I was just a 4th grader, 9, 10 years old. There was something in my heart that wanted something more. It wanted to be changed. It wanted to be transformed. I wanted to become something more than I felt I was. As an adult, I often saw myself as an empty box. Actually, I drew a picture of myself as an empty box in my 20s. Father, I'm like an empty box. Would you fill me? Would you make me full inside? That was my prayer in my 20s. But here at 9 or 10 years old, that was my favorite book. I don't know what your favorite book is, but think about it. They're clues. They offer you clues or ideas or hints as to what you were created to do and to be. The second thing I ask people sometimes is, what was your favorite fairy tale? You know what fairy tales are, right? Especially in the Black Forest. A lot of the fairy tales come out of the Black Forest. Other places, of course, in Europe. Fairy tales are interesting, too, because they're like a myth, a story that captures for us something of who we're called to be and who we're meant to become. My favorite fairy tale was Jack and the Bean Stalk. Jack and the Bean Stalk. Do you know that fairy tale? Jack and his mother were poor. They didn't have any money. He had a little tiny coin. He went someplace and he sold the coin for 1 bean. He bought 1 bean, seed. He bought a seed. He took it home and he planted it outside the house. And that little plant grew up, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. It grew tall, way up high. It grew up and reached into the heavens. That's a fairy tale. But in the fairy tale is a hidden story. It's like a parable. There's a meaning in there much deeper than you can see it is. There's something in there for us to understand. Why am I attracted to that fairy tale? My husband has a different fairy tale he likes, because it's who he is and what he was called to be. But my fairy tale was of Jack and the beanstalk. So one day, little Jack decided to climb up that beanstalk. He decided to go up into the heavens. And he climbed 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 and he climbed. And at some point he arrived up into another heaven, another dimension far above earth, a different realm. And there he met an ogre. We call it an ogre, a giant, somebody that was evil. Jack had to defeat him and destroy him, this little boy, overcome him. He did that. He won the battle over this man. He overcame him. In this life, this Christian life, we're called to overcome many things, to get the victory over them. And we can become an overcomer. But this is the fairy tale that attracted me as a child. And Jack returned and came back down that beanstalk with a treasure. He found precious treasure It was called gold. He brought back gold. Gold is a wonderful symbolic element of the most important thing, the rarest of things, the most precious of things you can find. He brought it back down to earth. And because of that, his family was nourished and well cared for, and things went on. But that's the fairy tale I liked, because it gives you clues to who you are meant to be, who you are called to be, who you were created to be. Each one of you is a unique and individual person. You're very individual. Remember, the no two snowflakes are ever alike. A guy named William Bentley studied all the snowflakes one year, decades and decades and decades ago. He took photographs of them, and he blew them up and looked at them. Not one snowflake was like another. That's how unique you are. That's how unique, precious you are. It's the purpose you contain that you were created with. And defining that purpose and direction for your life is extremely important to your satisfaction. When you finish your life, will you be satisfied with it? Will you be content with the life you lived? It's a big question, isn't it? I like to ask big questions to you because I ask them of myself. The only reason I ask you is because I ask them too. Jack and the Bean Stalk was my favorite fairy tale. Gives you something to think about this week or in the future. They help you know yourself better. It's important that we know who we are and what we contain and who we're called to become. And so as life went along, when I went to Germany, I was invited to go to this clinic in the Black Forest. I mentioned it before, in Bad Herrenalb, where Dr. Walter Leckler was the chief of that clinic. And there in that clinic, I discovered and saw things I had never seen before. Remember, I was a nurse. And in my student nursing experiences, I had to go to Chicago and Cook County psychiatric wards for 3 months. I had to walk in the tunnels underneath from the hospital to the nurse's home. It was a very frightening time and place. But in Cook County psychiatric wards, you know what I did? I played cards with Jesus Christ. Can you imagine? That's as an intern student nurse. We had to spend our time with the patients there. And this man believed he was Jesus Christ. And I played cards with him. And I actually defeated him. I don't know what the card game was. But I also met some other people that were long dead and gone in the psychiatric ward. But what I discovered is that psychiatry doesn't have the answers for people. They don't know how to heal them. Psychology doesn't know how to heal them. As I explained before, I went to grad school at age 65 because I wanted to understand the theories that they were using to treat people with and why they didn't work. You know, therapy can uncover your wounds, uncover what happened to you, the pains you experienced, and the losses you suffered. But they don't know how to heal it, friends. They don't know how to fix it. This is my story. This is my passion. This is what I experienced. I experienced the power of God, healing my deepest wounds at the death of our son. After 10 years of leukemia, I discovered the power of God was there for me. So one day I was invited to this clinic in Black Forest in Bad Herrenalb to spend a couple of weeks there and listen on the team. And when I was there, doing an internship, I went into Bad Herrenalb. It's a spa town where there's wonderful spas there. Lots of clinics in the south of Germany, and you're blessed to have them. But I was there shopping downtown with a friend. Suddenly, one moment, a thought came into my heart that I need to go back to the clinic right now. I need to go back right now. It was an urgent prompting in my spirit. I call it that, urgent prompting in my spirit. Because I had learned by then it was the voice of God. It was the voice of the Holy Spirit telling me something I needed to do. So I said to my friend Nancy, we need to go back right now to the clinic. I don't know why, but we need to go back. We walked all the way up the hill back to the clinic. And I didn't know what to do once I got there. And I walked around in the clinic and I didn't, why am I here, Lord? What am I here for? Finally, I didn't know what else to do, so I went across the street to the cafe, right across the street from the clinic in the Black Forest, and we sat outside on the deck having coffee and kuchen, just relaxing. And Nancy and I were talking about this interesting concept of therapy that we were seeing in this clinic. I had never seen it in the United States in the mental hospitals or in the hospitals or a nursing school. I had not seen it in the church either. This is what troubled me. I saw healing going on there that I never saw or seen in my church experience. I didn't see the power of God, the life of God bringing healing to people. Something unusual was happening there. As I told you in my first podcast, what some of the things I discovered there. But on this particular day, I'm wandering around, Lord, why am I here? What am I here for? So we went across the street and we sat down and had a cup of coffee and a kuchen. And we finished to get up to go, and suddenly a voice in English spoke to me. And she said, I'm going to get it right here. She said to me, I heard a voice in English saying, can I borrow your hairbrush? Can I borrow your hairbrush? I turned around and looked for the voice. And I saw this woman who was pretty beaten up. Her hair was a mess. She looked terrible. She looked dark. Her eyes were dark. Her hair was a mess, and she wanted my hairbrush. She wanted to brush her hair because she was waiting for her parents to come and take her home from the clinic. And so we talked a little bit, and she said to me, so I gave her my hairbrush with a little bit of, I wasn't sure about this hairbrush business, but I knew I had to give it to her. So I watched her brush her hair down. And then she finally said, could I talk with you a moment? Could I talk with you a moment, friend? If I could talk with you, what would you ask me? This woman said to me, actually she said, first she began to tell me her story. This woman had been up in Berlin in a witch's coven. In a witch's coven in Berlin, Germany, for 3 years. As a result, she had become schizophrenic. She had been in a witch's coven. The old cult has nothing to offer you. There's some supernatural things there, but it's from the wrong spirit. It's from an evil spirit. It's not from the Spirit of God. It's the Holy Spirit. It's the spirit of darkness that brings you into more fear and more bondage. The old cult is rampant all over Europe, all over America. But the old cult does not bring you into life. It brings you into darkness and more darkness and more darkness. If you're in the occult, you need to change and get out of it and turn away from it because there's no power in it to love you. There's no power to heal you, no power to give you purpose and direction for your life. The occult is evil, friends. But the woman finally looked at me and then she said, can you tell me if there is a God? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there is a God? Big question, isn't it? Can you tell me if there is a God? Perhaps I'll name this podcast, Can You Tell Me If There Is a God? And I looked at her and I said, yes, I can. Yes, I can tell you why I know there's a God. And I went on to tell her some of the supernatural experiences I had experienced with the living God in the illness and death of our 7-year-old, and he died at 16. And those experiences, supernatural experiences with the living God, experiences with the loving God. The love of God descended upon me like a cloud. I'm not going to tell you those stories today, but I told them to her. And as I watched her face, as I told her these stories, suddenly her face began to change. Suddenly her face began to change. It just began to change. Light began to come into her eyes. Light began to flow into her face. The darkness began to leave her. This wild, haunted look began to leave her, began to disappear. And soon I saw something supernatural come into her eyes, peace. Peace came into her eyes. Joy came into her eyes. Life came into her eyes. Because she had begun to believe in the living God, that he loved her, that he was there for her. Her mother and father arrived. She left. I never saw her again. I don't know her name. But I'll never forget that moment in the Black Forest, in that coffee shop, when this woman said to me, can I borrow your hairbrush? I've heard this question many other times in the clinics in Germany. Can you tell me if there is a God? I've seen it on the trains. When I be on the train, I could tell you many stories, but I think this is enough for you to think about. Can I tell you if there is a God? Yes, I can, friends. And I'll stay tuned to listen to me next time I talk. Thank you for listening.